Alright, so today we're going to be finding sine and cosine based on a graph. Alright, based on a graph like this one, we're going to develop the actual function, alright, write the equation ourselves. Alright, so a couple of strategies when writing equations like this. Alright, we first want to find our vertical shift or our d value. Look at the highest point and lowest point and find the middle. Alright, we'll look for our midline. Okay, well once we find our midline, we're going to look for our A value. Okay, A being our amplitude, the distance from the midline, top of the bottom, from our maximum to our minimum. All right. After that, we will find the period. Okay, find the period and use the period to help us find our B value. All right, we'll find the distance of one complete cycle, or may have to look at more than one cycle, etc. Okay. A lot of this is depending on what you choose. Okay, it depends on what you choose. All right, which I know can be confusing for some, but there are a lot of options for these, which is a good thing. All right, a lot of options for these. But we're going to discuss a couple and be more specific. And we also have to choose a starting point. Okay, choosing a starting point and looking at our C value. All right, our C value for our horizontal shift. Okay. Writing your equation, it's easier to have that equation when the B value is factored out, or to write your equation. And you will see what we mean when we start going with that. Okay. So let's look at our first example. All right. We're going to find an equivalent trig function for the following graph. So we can choose to start with sine or choose to start with cosine. I could start here and look for my first sine, look for a sine graph like that. I could start here and look at that sine function. Okay, I could start here and look at the cosine. I could even start here and look at cosine. Heck, you could start here. Let's go. What haven't we used it? Let's go like this. I could start a cosine down here and kind of estimate where it would be. All right, but the easiest way to do it, okay, and I don't like using that word. The best way to do it would be to start at a midline, all right, or start at a maximum. Okay, don't start randomly like right there. That wouldn't make any sense because neither sine nor cosine just start in a random position. Okay, so what I want you to do first, I'm just going to arbitrarily pick sine. All right, so I'm going to write my function down y. Whoops, let's go this part. We'll go y equals, and you're going to need to leave some space because we're going to do this for cosine as well. Y equals the sine of blank x minus blank plus some blank. Okay. The first thing we wanted to do was look at our d value. Look at our... Alright, again, so we're going to try to find our d value. Okay, we're going to try to look at our highest point here is 2. Our lowest point is negative 2. So the middle here, our midline, is right there. So our d value is 0. So I'm really not, there is no vertical shift in this one. Okay. After that, I want to look for my amplitude. Okay, if you look, remember the amplitude is half of your range. Alright, so my range looks to be from negative 2 to 2, which would be 4 units. Alright, so half of that, my amplitude, is 2 because I'm traveling 2 units up from my midline. Okay. Next thing I want to do is look for a period. So I'm looking at this sine graph right there. Alright, I'm going to look at that sine graph. So to find my period of that sine graph, I'm going to take where I started from, 3 pi over 2. Excuse me, take where I ended, and subtract where I started from, pi over 2. Okay, obviously some of you may have already done this in your head. Alright, 3 pi over 2 minus pi over 2 gives me an answer of pi. Well, I'm going to use my period to help me determine what my b value is. Alright, so I know that if I divide, my period is equal to 2 pi over b. Well, don't write that p down, because we know what our period is, right? Our period is actually pi. Some of you may be able to do this in your head. 2 pi divided by what gives me right 1 pi. Or you could think about multiplying both sides by b multiplied by b, so pi times b equals 2 pi. Well, then b would have to be 2. Okay, if I divide both sides by pi. So my b value is 2. Make sure you leave some space for yourself over here because we're going to have to do cosine as well. So I also have to figure out, okay, the last thing I want to figure out, where's my horizontal shift? Where did I start? Okay, well, I started here at pi over 2, which means I moved to the right pi over 2. So that would be our function for sine. Alright, now if I were to do cosine, okay, and I'm going to do cosine underneath because I know that you probably have written all over your note sheet, as did I when I first started doing this. So y equals blank cosine of blank x minus blank plus blank. Okay, so I am going to look at cosine. Let's see here. I'm going to take away this green. Alright, take that away. Take that away. Okay, so we're going to look at cosine. And I'm going to just stay pretty close to where I was before. Alright, so I'm going to start right here. And go up and back. Right there. Okay. So if I start there, alright, this line right here looks to be at, if we stay consistent, we're going up by pi over 4, so this would be 7 pi over 4. First thing I want to find is my d value. Was there a vertical shift? There was not here, so that's 0. My amplitude is also 2. Okay. My period. Again, solving for my period, I take the highest value, my ending point, 7 pi over 4, minus my starting point, 3 pi over 4, and get pi. I get 4 pi over 4, which is just pi, right? So I know that same thing here, I got pi, so this has to be 2. Okay. Where did I start? What the heck? I started here at 3 pi over 4, so I write minus 3 pi over 4. Fun stuff. Contain the excitement. Try to. Let's try another one. How about it? You ready? I'm ready. Alright, I'm going to say one more thing actually. You recognize that, boom, 2 and 2, 2 and 2, 0 and 0. Okay, the only thing that really changes when you're dealing with sine and cosine is their horizontal shifts. Because they're a co-function or complementary functions, their amplitudes are going to be the same. Their periods will be the same on a given graph, and their vertical shifts will be the same on a given graph. Alright, right, especially right here, and you'll see that in this one as well. Okay, it all depends on where you start too. Alright, where you start kind of determines some of the things as well. Alright, so we're going to write a sine and cosine function for the following curve. So I'm going to start with sine again. Y equals blank sine of blank x minus blank plus something. Okay, so I want to determine where my midline is. Alright, so if I have -1 and 5, I've traveled, that's 6 units. Okay, well half of 6 is 3. So 1, 2, 3. Learn to count, dude. So my midline is here. Alright, so that is going to be 2. Okay. Next I want to determine my A value, my amplitude. So I travel up 1, 2, 3 and down 1, 2, 3. So my amplitude is 3. Okay. Now this one's a little funky. If I were to start here and look at my sine curve, I have to go around here and then I could estimate about where it is. Or I could backtrack to my midline and start there so I could see a full period. Right there. Okay. Well, if you'll notice, usually sine goes midline, max, midline. This one goes midline, min, midline. Which means I'm going to have a negative. It's going to have to be, that's hard to see. Let's just make it green. That's going to be a negative 3. All right, because there's that flip or that reflection over the x-axis. Okay. Well, now I want to find what is my period here. What is the period? So P equals, I start at negative pi over 2, I end at 3 pi over 2, so I'm going to negative 3 pi over 2 where I end, minus where I start, plus, I get 2 pi. That's pretty sick. So I know that 2 pi equals 2 pi over b. Well, my b value has to be 1. If I multiply both sides by b, divide everything by 2 pi, I get b to be 1. Alright. That negative took care of the flip. Alright, I'm not at 0, 0. I didn't start at 0, 0 anymore. I started at negative pi over 2 here. So if I subtract the negative, remember you add pi over 2. Okay. Remember, cosine is a cofunction, so they're complementary, so they operate in much of the same way. Okay, so I'm going to start off. Alright, I'm going to start us off here. Y equals cosine x minus plus. Well, the vertical shift will be the same. It's still going to be negative 3. If I look at cosine, I'm going to look at, let's go orange. I'll look here at this cosine. Okay, again, I could have started here, but you won't see the full thing. I can see a full period starting from there. Alright, so nothing changed here and here. Okay, my period goes from negative pi to positive pi. Well, pi minus negative pi gives me 2 pi. So my b value is still 1. The horizontal shift now is plus pi. Okay. Ooh, that should not be a negative 3. I'm sorry. That should be positive. Alright. You could have also started down there and made that a negative cosine as well. The same would have worked too. And then you would not have had a horizontal shift. Alright. This one we're going to have to breeze through a little bit. So, here we go. Alright, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I'm going to pause it for a minute here. I'm going to identify my midline. Here we go. Alright, so I'm going to look at this sine curve. I got my midline to be 1, my amplitude to be 3. My ending point is 0.75, we're finding my period now. Minus negative 1.25 gives me 2. So 2 equals 2 pi over b. Multiply both sides, 2b equals 2 pi. Divide by 2, pi has to be my b value. Okay. I horizontally shifted plus 1.25. Sorry, that's tough to read. I want you to try cosine yourself now. Okay, try cosine yourself. I'm going to use this as my cosine graph here. Right there. So try cosine. Alright, so here's what I came up for cosine. My amplitude did not change, they're cofunctions. My vertical shift did not change because the midline stayed the same. My period ended up being the same. My period was the same as well, 1.25 minus negative 0.75 to get 2, and still I get pi. Alright, again, my horizontal shift was the only thing that was different. Okay, what I want you to do, okay, there are a lot of possibilities. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possibilities. There are even more. They're not endless, but there are a lot. Alright, so what I want you to do is to try to come up with your own sine and cosine, and I will write a bunch of combinations down, and we'll see if you're able to do that. Alright, here are the 6 functions I was able to come up with. You'll notice that my amplitude is the same in every single one. Then my vertical shift, that should be -1, is also the same in every single one. The period, the b value, is the same in every single one. What changes are my horizontal shifts and whether or not the a value is negative. Alright, there are more that you could have come up with as well, depending on if you extended this or not. Hopefully that helped. Hopefully that went well for you. We will discuss this more tomorrow in class. Adios.